This is Scholars page, and this is an introductory class for Java, where we will look at making our first Java program and also looking at various primitive data types. The first thing we do is open Eclipse. I'll leave a link on how to download Eclipse in the description. After opening Eclipse or opening the Eclipse application, you go to top left File, then you go to New, and then you click on Java Project. You can name this project anything. For now, I'll name it Java Introduction, but you can name it anything. There's no limitations requirements. After writing the project name, you click on Next, and then you click on Finish. This usually doesn't come up, but if it does, you can just click Don't Create. If it doesn't come up, then you're fine. Usually it doesn't. After this, you see it has been Java introduction folder has been created here, where my mouse is on the left side. If we check the folder, we see that there's actually a JRE system library, which includes all Java running files, which are necessary to run Java on this computer. And along with that, we also see, if I close this here, we also see there's an empty source folder. Now to make our first class or file, we right click on Java introduction folder, we hover over new, and we click on class. Now you can name the class anything. I'll name it basics, but there's no limitations, you can name it everything. But after the name comes an important step. You need to click on public static void main. This is an important step which creates the file how we need it to be. Of course, you can write this specific program or this specific program's code on your own, but it's easier to press this button and let Java do it automatically for you, or Eclipse do it automatically for you, because it's easier and it's more simpler. After clicking this, you click Finish, and then our first file or class has been created. Now in our class, we see that there's two components. First is public class basics, which is the name of my file. And the second one is public static void main string args. Now this is the main string or main part of the program where we'll write our code and execute it. And all of the code, including inside this main code, is actually inside the bigger public class basics code. But we don't need to get into that right now. Also, you see that there's a comment here which has automatically been generated as written by Eclipse, but we don't really need that, so we can just select it and press backspace on it to delete it. Now the first thing we'll do is create our first program. Now what we'll do is write sysout and hit Control space. Now this is a shortcut in Eclipse which automatically fills out the system.out.println function for us. It's just a neat shortcut. And inside that brackets, you add two quotation marks, and Eclipse usually adds the end quotation marks on your own. And inside those quotation marks, let's write hello world. Of course, this is a tradition or conventional in Java programming lessons, so that's it. But for this extra line, the line number 6, since we don't really need it, we can just hover or click on it and then click Control D, which is a neat shortcut to delete lines. After that, we click on this green button, Run Basics, which will run my file, and as we see in this basic console at the bottom, it writes hello world, what I had written in my program. Now at this step, if you have followed me through, this is a fully completed Java program. So congratulations, now you're a Java programmer. But this is not all. Now let's get into basic data primitive types, which are the most basic stuff you need to know Java. Now let's delete this for now, since we are going to look at something else. The first thing we'll look at is declaring a variable. Now I'll explain what's a variable after we write this down. I'll write int with I small, then I write my int. To be honest, this can be anything. I can even write apple, that doesn't matter. and after that I hit the quotation end marks or semicolon and quotation marks. Now to simply variables are basically boxes which can store information or data. It can also store values. But of course, there's multiple types of boxes. In this case, we are using int, small for integer, which allows us to put a whole number or integral inside its specific int box. Now, the name of this box is apple. This is a declaration of a variable. Now we need to initialize that variable, so we give it a value. Of course, this apple variable doesn't have any value yet, so we'll initialize it. We write the same name, and then we write equals to, and let's say we give it the value of 24, and then the end semicolon marks. Now we have declared the variable, and then we have initialized the variable by giving it a value. Now we do the same thing again as what we previously did. We'll write sys out control space, and it will automatically write this for us. And now, except of quotation marks, we'll just write apple. Now, if we hit run, which is the green button at the top, if we press it and look at the console, which is our basically output, it shows us 24, which is the number. Now, for example, if I change that number to, let's say, 49, and then I run it, it will change the value to 49. This is basically how variables work. After declaring a variable, you can initialize the variable by giving it a value, and then this value can be used in any procedures or sub-procedures. Of course, as I said, there's multiple types of boxes which can hold values. So another box, let's go through all of them quickly. Another box that can give a value or hold values is shot. And let me name this my shot, and that's basically it. Now also another way of initializing variable is writing it during the declaration. So for example, if we use the same int apple, and rather than finishing it, we write an equals to and then write a number, let's for example say 70, and then we run it, it gives the same result because we have initialized it during the declaration. Of course, we can also do this in short, which basically holds a shorter amount of value than the int function. So in this case, but it still holds a very significant amount of numbers. So we can go 729. And then, of course, we sys out control space and also sys out my short. Now, if we run this program, the first thing it prints out is apple, which is our int, and then it prints out my short, which is 729 as I gave the value. Now, as you see, I wrote my with m small, but short connecting with my with s capital. This is more a tradition or a convention in Java where the second word is used with the capital letter, and the first word is used with a small letter. Now let's continue. Another type of value holding function is, or primitive data type is long. Now, as the name suggests, it can hold a very large amount of data, higher than integer, which is a bigger version of int, and also higher than short, which is actually smaller than int. So now let's go with 10,000. It can hold that kind of value easily. Of course, to test this, we sys out and control space and then my long. Now if we run this, as you see, it prints out that number. Now these are all whole values, which means int, short, and long are mainly used for only whole values, integral numbers. But there's also primitive data types for decimals. For example, a commonly used primitive data type is double. Let's name it my double, since it's a conventional again. And we can give it the value of, let's say, 1.2345 or 46. And then I hit the end quotation marks. And again, we sys out control space and then print my double. Now if we run this again, it gives us the value of what the double was written. And again, the variable that was declared was using the amount of storage for double, which is mainly used for decimal system, and also a double or extended version of int. Now there's also a smaller version of double. How there was a smaller version of int which is short, it's called float. And again, we can make my float and equal it to, let's say, 2.34. It's a smaller version of double. But again, Java on its own thinks of this as a conventional double. So what we need to do is actually write F at the end here to make Java or Eclipse realize that this is actually a float number, not a double number. Now again, we sys out and we write my float. And we print out and see that it works fine, everything's good. Now, most of the time, or most conventional ones that are used in Java programming as double and also int. These are the main ones that are used. Of course, the other ones are also used, depends on the situation, but mostly double and int are used. Now, there's also a primitive data type which holds characters. One of them is char. Char basically holds all characters of the Unicode, which means it can hold a letter included. My char equals to making a character, so it means we can also add a letter. Let's add the letter A, sure, A, and then end brackets or semicolons. And again, we sys out, repeating the steps here, and my char or char, however you want to pronounce it. When I run the program, it gives the letter A. Now the next one, which is left, is Boolean. Now Boolean is actually kind of special because it can hold values of true and false. So it's a type which basically allows you to name a variable to either true or either false, which means something is being true, a variable being true. For example, a plus b equals c, either this is true or this is false. So again, if we sys out and print my boolean, it will list out true. Of course, I can also make this to false, and that just depends on what the operation is. And the final primitive data type is byte, and this is a very small form of number, I guess primitive data type, since it can only hold numbers from -128 till +127. So if I do that, and of course write sys out my byte, it outprints 127. Now if I write 128, it gives me an error and underlines the word 128 because byte can only hold up till 127. And same goes for negative. If I hold more than 128, let's go 129, it doesn't work. But if I go -128, it's all good. Now it's -128 is bigger, one number higher than the positive, because 0 is included in the positive. Of course, this is completely just Java doing its stuff, so you don't need to worry about any of that. For now, all you need to do are all these primitive data types. This is my first lesson on Java Introduction, where we have learned how to create our first basic Hello World program and also learned about various primitive data types. Next video, we'll look at unprimitive data types and also strings and classes. That's it for my video. Good luck coding.